basically the question was, if I could give a framework for how to answer exam questions, very, very specifically based on the time that you spend on it and what exactly you're doing in the exam. So this is the slide that I came up with. In previous videos on taking exams, I've said that I think you really need to spend a quarter or to a third of your time just planning your answer. One of the signs of stupidity when you're taking an exam is you pick up the exam and after 5 minutes you hear somebody just like frantically typing and writing out an answer, and you know that that person doesn't know what they're doing. There's a huge amount of planning that has to take place. But I think there's a specific way to structure this amount of time. Now, let me go back a second and be clear that I think the way to do this, very often you'll have like a 3-hour exam, and each one, and the exam will be like broken up into thirds, and each part of it is an hour. The planning time pertains not to the exam as a whole, but to each question. Because I think if you spend too much time planning everything up front, you have this back and forth, like you've planned out the whole exam, but you have to go back and think about writing part 1 and then part 2. So this breakdown takes place within the confines of a particular part or subpart of the exam, assuming that it's discrete. So you've got an hour, spend 15 to 20 minutes kind of doing the following. And you have different, and each of these is a pass at the fact pattern that you're reading. On the first pass, and I don't want to kind of micromanage how you spend that 15 or 20 minutes on that 1 hour portion of the exam, but you want to spend your first pass just reading, not writing anything, but kind of making mental notes as you read through. You can kind of scribble little things if you're given a hard copy on the exam, but just little notes to yourself. But you're not writing anything more than that, or even underlining. And you want to get to the call of the question, because how you write can very much depend on what it is that you're asked to do. Now, most of the hypos that I give you are of the most general pain in the ass type, with the assess or analyze. But sometimes you're asked very specific questions and asked to take a very specific point of view, write a bench memo to a judge. That's still a pretty objective analysis and is like most things that I ask you to do, but you are writing to a court and you want to kind of remember that. Or maybe the call to question explicitly asks you to form up the claims on behalf of a particular side. Again, I still think you're going to do the overall objective IRAC analysis, but it's each different variation will call for a slightly different twist, okay? On your second pass, and you might even read it twice if that helps you, skim and then read it. But your second pass is where you're scribbling notes to yourself, and this is where you're kind of doing light bulb issue spotting, where you look over the facts a second time and then you realize that issues will just pop into your head. That calls for an analysis of battery. That calls for, that's a strict liability question because it's Wile E. Coyote with an explosive, he's riding an explosive rocket. And you don't worry too much, you don't worry at this point about structuring, you're letting your mind wander and catch whatever issues that you notice. Doesn't have to be systematic. Again, just it's basically brainstorming. On the third pass, especially if it's an open book exam, but even if it's not, you kind of take a more deliberate approach looking for gaps that you didn't notice. So if in the second pass, basically you're kind of grabbing the easiest issues, the one that just pop out at you. On this pass, and it's a little bit easier if you have an open book exam and you've got an outline, what you're doing is you're issue spotting more deliberately, and you're looking at the facts that you didn't know what to do with before, because you've scooped up all the easy ones and put them out of the way. Here, you use your outline. Maybe you flip the outline for different kinds of law that you haven't yet had a chance to apply, but maybe is something that the professor might have found facts to catch and force you to analyze. So this is kind of a more deliberate issue spotting. Okay. On the fourth pass, maybe you look at the facts again, but at this point, maybe it's not a pass of the fact pattern, but you're organizing your answer in outline form. So you're actually assembling everything. If it's crim or torts, as I said before, generally you try to follow the order of transactions, but especially with crim, you start with conspiracy as the first thing that you try to analyze because it affects how everyone else becomes accessorially liable for the crimes of other people. Or if it's another subject, you try to find the threshold issues first and then come up with a good way to organize. And I draw the line here. After the fourth pass, then you can write and you're out of this 25 or 33% period. And you don't dismiss the fact that you might spot other issues or you might correct things as you're writing out your exam, whether or not it's in Blackboard or software, or I don't know how many of you still handwrite exams, or if you're electrocuted if you try to do that. Who knows in the modern law school. But all of that, I think, is really important steps for you to walk through before you just start writing. If you just start writing, as at least some students do, you just end up being incoherent. And even the very good points that you make, even if you're catching a lot of good issues, the kind of lack of structure or panicked back and forth writing will bury the fact that you might well still know what you're talking about, even if you're a little bit spastic, and you won't get credit for answers that you're actually getting.